from 12 to chapter 16, excuse me. Jephthah and Ephraim. The Ephraimite forces were called out, and they crossed over to Zaphon, and they said to Jephthah, "Why did you go to fight the Ammonites without calling us to go with you? We're going to burn down your house over your head." Jephthah answered, "I and my people were engaged in a great struggle with the Ammonites, and although I called, you didn't save me out of their hands. When I saw that you would not help, I took my life in my own hands and crossed over to fight the Ammonites, and the Lord gave me the victory over them. Now why have you come up today to fight me?" Jephthah then called together the men of Gilead and fought against Ephraim, and the Gileadites struck them down, because the Ephraimites had said, "You Gileadites are renegades from Ephraim and Manasseh." And the Gileadites captured the fords of the Jordan, leading to Ephraim, and wherever a survivor of Ephraim said, "Let me cross over," the men of Gilead asked him, "Are you an Ephraimite?" If they replied, "No," they said, "All right, say Sebibboleth." If he said Sebibboleth because he could not pronounce the word correctly, they seized him and killed him at the fords of the Jordan. 42,000 Ephraimites were killed at that time. Jephthah led Israel 6 years, and then Jephthah and the Gileadite died and were buried in the town of Gilead. Ibinan, Elian, and Abinan. After him, Ibnaz of Bethlehem led Israel. He had 30 sons and 30 daughters, and he gave his daughters away in marriage to those outside of him. And for his sons, he brought in 30 young women as wives from outside of his clan. Ibinan led Israel 7 years, and then Ibizan died and was buried in Bethlehem. After him went Elian and Zebulun. The Zebulite led Israel for 10 years, and then Elon died and was buried in Ajalon in the land of Zebulun. After him, Abidan, son of Heliel from Pirathon, led Israel, and he had 40 sons and 30 grandsons, and they rode on 70 donkeys. He led Israel for 8 years. Then Abidan, son of Heliel, died and was buried at Pirathon in Ephraim, in the hill country of the Amalekites. The birth of Samson. After the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, so the Lord delivered them into the hands of the Philistines for 40 years. A certain man of Zorah, named Manoah, from the clan of Danites, had a wife who was childless, unable to give birth. The angel of the Lord appeared to her and said, "You are barren and childless. If you are going to become pregnant, but you are going to become pregnant and give birth to a son. Now see to it that if you drink no wine, have other fermented drinks, and you do not eat anything unclean. You will become pregnant and have a son whose head is never to be touched by a razor, because the boy is to be a Nazirite, dedicated to God from the womb. He will take the lead in delivering Israel from the hands of the Philistines." And then the woman went to her husband and told him, "A man of God came to me. He looked like an angel of God, very awesome. And I didn't ask him where he came from, and he didn't tell me his name. But he said to me, you will become pregnant and have a son. Now then, drink no wine or other fermented drink, and do not eat anything unclean, because the boy will be a Nazarite of God from the womb until the day of his birth, or day of his death. Then Manoah prayed to the Lord, pardon your servant, Lord. I beg you to let the man of God you sent to us come again to teach us how to bring up the boy who is to be born. God heard Manoah, and then the angel of God came again to the woman when she was out in the field, but her husband, Manoah, was not with her. The woman hurried to tell her husband, he's here, the man who appeared to me the other day. Manoah got up and followed his wife, and when he came to the man, he said, are you the man who talked to my wife? I am, he said. So Manoah asked him, when your words are fulfilled, what is to be the rule that governs the boy's life and work? The angel of the Lord answered, your wife must do all that I have told her. She must not eat anything that comes from the grapevine, nor drink any wine or any fermented drink, nor eat anything unclean. She must do everything I have commanded her. Manoah said to the angel of the Lord, we would like you to stay until we prepare a young goat for you. The angel of the Lord replied, even though you detain me, I will not eat any of your food. If you prepare a burnt offering, offer it to the Lord. Manoah did not realize that it was the angel of the Lord. Then Manoah inquired of the angel, what is your name, so that I may honor you when your word comes true? He replied, why do you ask my name? It is beyond understanding. Then Manoah took a young goat, together with the grain offered, and sacrificed it on the rock to the Lord. And the Lord did an amazing thing while Manoah and his wife watched. As the flame blazed up from the altar toward heaven, the angel of the Lord ascended in the flame. Seeing Manoah and his wife fell with their faces to the ground. When the angel of the Lord did not show himself again to Manoah and his wife, Manoah realized that it was the angel of the Lord. We are doomed to die, he said to his wife. We have seen God. But his wife answered, if the Lord had meant to kill us, he would not have accepted a burnt offering and grain offering from our hands, nor shown us all of these things, or now told us this. The woman gave birth to a boy, named him Samson. He grew, and the Lord blessed him, and the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him while he was in Manhanadan, between Zorah and Eshtaol. Samson's marriage. Chapter 14. Samson went down to Timnah and saw there was a young Philistine woman. When he returned, he said to his father and mother, I have seen a Philistine woman in Timnah, and now I must go and get her for me as my wife. His father and mother replied, isn't there an acceptable woman among your relatives, our people? Must you go to the uncircumcised Philistines to get a wife? Then they said to him, we've come to tie you up and hand you over to the Philistines. Samson said, swear to me that you won't kill me yourselves. Agreed, they answered. We will only tie you up and hand you over to them. We will not kill you. So they bound him with 2 new ropes and led him up from the rock. And as he approached Lehi, the Philistines came toward him, shouting, Spirit of the Lord, come powerfully upon him. The ropes of his arms became like charred flax, and the bindings dropped from his hand. Finding the fresh jawbone of a donkey, he grabbed it and struck down 1,000 men. Then Samson said, with the donkey's jawbone, I have made donkeys of them. donkey's jawbone. I have killed 1,000 men. When he finished speaking, he threw away the jawbone, and the place was called Ramath Leah. Because he was very thirsty, he cried out to the Lord, "You have given your servant this great victory. Must I now die of thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised?" Then God opened up the hollow place in Leah, and when Samson drank, his strength returned and he revived. So the spring was called En Hekor, and it is now still there in Leah. Samson led Israel for 20 years in the days of the Philistines. Chapter 16, Samson and Delilah. One day Samson went to Gaza, where he saw a prostitute. He went in and spent the night with her. The people of Gaza were told, "Samson is here." So they surrounded the place and lay in wait for him all night at the city gate. They made no move during the night, saying, "At dawn, we'll kill him." But Samson lay there only until the middle of the night. And then he got up, took hold of the doors of the city gate together with the two posts that tore them loose, bar and all. He lifted them to his shoulders and carried them to the top of the hill that faces Hebron. Sometime later, he fell in love with a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. The rulers of the Philistines went to her and said, "See if you can lure him into showing you the secret of his great strength and how we can overpower him so we may tie him up and subdue him. And each one of us will give you 1,100 shekels of silver." So Delilah said to Samson, "Tell me the secret of your great strength and how you can be tied up and subdued." Samson answered, "If anyone ties me up with 7 fresh bowstrings that have not been dried, I'll become as weak as any other man." Then the rulers of the Philistine brought her 7 fresh bowstrings that had not been dried, and when she tied him with them, men hidden in the room, she called to him, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." But he snapped the bowstrings as easily as a piece of string snaps when it comes close to a flame. So the secret of his strength was not discovered. Then Delilah said, "Samson, you have made a fool of me. You have lied to me. Come now and tell me how you can be tied." He said, "If anyone ties me securely with new ropes that I have never been used, I'll become weak as any other man." So Delilah took new ropes and tied him with them. And then the man hidden in the room, she called to him, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." But he snapped the ropes off of his arm as if they were threads. Delilah said to Samson, "All this time you have been making a fool of me and lying to me. Tell me how you can be tied." He replied, "If you weave the 7 strands of my head into the fabric of a loom and tighten it with a pin, I'll become as weak as any other man." So while he was sleeping, Delilah took 7 strands of his head, wove them into a fabric, and tightened it with a pin. But then she called him, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." He awoke from his sleep, pulled up the pin and the loom with the fabric. And then she said to him, "How can you say I love you when you won't confide in me? This is the 3rd time you have made a fool of me, and haven't told me the secret of your strength." With such nagging, she prodded him day after day until he was sick to death of it. So he told her, "No razor has ever been used on my head, because I have been a Nazirite dedicated to God from my mother's womb. If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me, and I would become as weak as any other man." Delilah saw that he had told her everything. She sent word to the rulers of the Philistines, "Come back once more. He has told me everything." So the rulers of the Philistines returned with the silver in their hands, and after putting him to sleep on her lap, she called for someone to shave off the 7 braids of his hair. So he became subdued to them, and his strength had left him. And then she called Samson The Philistines are upon you. He awoke from his sleep and thought, I'll go out as before and shake myself free. But he did not know that the Lord had left him. And then the Philistines seized him, gouged out his eyes, and took him down to Gaza, binding him with bronze shackles. They set him to a grinding grain in the prison, but the hair on his head began to grow again after it had been shaved. The death of Samson. Now the rulers of the Philistines assembled to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon, their god, and to celebrate. Our God has delivered Samson, our enemy, into our hands. When the people saw him, they praised their God, saying, Our God has delivered our enemy into our hands, the one who has laid waste to our land and multiplied our slain. While they were in high spirit, they shouted, Bring out Samson to entertain us. So they called Samson out of the prison, and he had performed for them. And when they stood him among the pillars, Samson said to the servant who held his hand, Put me where I can feel the pillars that support the temple, so that I may lean against them. Now the temple was crowded with men and women. All the rulers of the Philistines were there on the roof. There were about 3,000 men, women watching Samson perform. Samson prayed to the Lord, Sovereign Lord, remember me. Please, God, strengthen me just once more and let me, with one blow, get revenge on the Philistines for my 2 eyes. Then Samson reached toward the 2 center pillars in which the temple stood, bracing himself against him, his right hand on one, his left hand on the other. Samson said, Let me die with the Philistines. Then he pushed with all his might, and down came the temple onto the rulers and all the people in it. Thus he killed many more when he died than when he had lived. Then his brothers and fathers and whole family went down to get him. They brought him back and buried him between Zorah and Eshtaol in the temple of Menahem, his father. He had led Israel for 20 years. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.